Well, hello. Welcome to episode 10. This is episode 10. This is the supplemental. I don't know why I said that slower than you would normally say a word. It's a bit Captain Kirk when you do that, isn't it? Anyway, welcome to episode 10. This is the supplemental episode. There is a short podcast of a conversation between myself and Theresa and Andy from Franklin Hawkins Funeral Directors. Franklin Hawkins Family Funeral Directors, which is very interesting. But this is a recording of the evening talk that they gave. Now, some of the quality of the recording isn't great, but some people have asked they'd like to see the whole thing, so here it is. So they talk a bit about their background, why they went into this line of work, which is very interesting. And then there's some questions. Now, I've put the questions on the screen because sometimes they're a bit obscure. I have edited it a bit because sometimes the questions, you just couldn't hear them, and then you couldn't really hear the response either. And also sometimes the same questions. You know what people are like? The same questions were asked again. And funnily enough, and reassuringly enough, the answers were the same. So I have edited it down. It was a 2-hour kind of time we had together, so I've taken it down to about an hour. So it's all there, most of it's there, most of the content. Some of it is a bit brutal. Some of the questions are quite blunt, particularly the very first one about embalming. So if you're slightly squeamish, here's a trigger warning. But they speak very openly and very plainly about, which is what we wanted in these sessions. This is the harsh reality and the hard practicalities of it. So I hope you enjoy this if you watch it. If you don't watch it, I hope you enjoy not watching it. But if you think this might be a bit heavy, watch the podcast, which is the shorter conversation we had. So here we are, episode 11, supplemental, the Death and Glory podcasts, and a conversation with Andy and Theresa from Franklin and Hawkins Family Funeral Directors.
I've been around the industry for probably 50 years. And I know you're all looking and saying, you couldn't have possibly been in that because of how we go. So I was a child funeral director now. A lot of people are local. My parents kept the Richmond pub at Stechford. Okay, I was born at the Richmond pub. Oh, right, okay. Well, we lived at the Richmond, and then we moved to Stewart's Road when Dad came out of the pub trade. But if you go back, and I'm 62 this year, if you go back to those days, it was a situation by where you as a child weren't allowed in a pub, not like they are now. So when I went to school, which was Stechford Primary School, one of the first people I met was a guy called, one of the Painter brothers, and I'm sure you all know painters, who were up at the Swan at Yardley, which I'll tell you now is no longer a family funeral directors, it's owned by a big organisation. But Steve and I became pals, and we used to go round to his mum and dad's place where they lived, which was over the top of Painters, funeral directors at the Swan at Yardley. So from the age of 7 or 8, I was around the funeral industry, so it was nothing unusual. It wasn't strange for me to be in that environment. And when you're a child of 7, you just accept things, don't you? So right the way through our school, we remained friends through secondary school until we went off to our various colleges or university. I went into the police force. Which was something my dad wanted me to do because part of our family had been in. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go into the army. But Dad insisted on the police force, and again in those days you did what your parents wanted you to do, didn't you? You know, it was something we did. And I was very lucky that I got a commission and went down to Hendon in London and spent 18 months down there where I got my degree, and then was posted back to the West Mids, and bizarrely was posted back to Acott's Green Police Station, which was just down the road from Painters. And Steve's dad at the time said, "Great, I've got one of the boys back," because I was classed as one of the boys. "I've got one of the boys back to help out and whatever." And I'm Mr. Painter, because all the Bible, Mr. Painter. "I'm sorry, Mr. Painter, because I'm in the police force, I'm not allowed to have a second job." He went, "I know the superintendent, I've already got it sorted down there. You're driving cars from Monday, you know, in your days." And that's how I progressed and got into the funeral industry. Within the police force at that time, I became known as the Grim Reaper. That was my sort of what people called me, and I ended up looking after police, fire brigade, and ambulance funerals, and then progressed on to one day when I had somebody from the MOD call me to say, "We've had one of our guys killed over it when Northern Ireland was going on. Can you look after a military funeral?" No idea. Into the Painters, and what should we do? "Oh, you'll be fine, just do this, that and the other." Anyway, I looked after the military funeral and then found myself on a list. You probably don't know some of these.
No, this is...
Found myself on a list of MOD approved funeral directors and have done military funerals for many years. Anyway, police force and I fell out. I lasted about 5 or 6 years. I came out of it and wanted to do something totally different and went into the AV industry, staging, lighting, sound. When I came out of that, I naturally, and always had the contact within the funeral industry, carried on through all those years of still doing funerals. Came out of the AV industry and thought, you know what, I really have a passion for this and I want to do this full time. This is what I enjoy doing, and I know that word "enjoy" is quite a strange thing to use, but we are charged with a very, very important role, and that's looking after people, whether they're deceased or alive. And funerals aren't just for, you like me to use the word dead, don't you?
Well, that's fine.
Okay, so people, we don't just look after people that are deceased. Our most important job is looking after the families and guiding them through what is a horrendous process. Statistics show that as an individual, we only actually have to deal with, and I've never known where I get this figure from, but 1.2 funerals in our lives. Both parents, it should be 2. Anyway, that's statistics. So, of course, when somebody's faced with organising a funeral, it's not something that they've got really any idea about. And that's where we come in. We look after the deceased, and we do as a small family business. That's so important to us, to make sure we look after that person that's passed away as if it was one of our own. And we still do very strange things, like when we go in the morning, we'll open the chapel doors and say morning, and when we go home at night, we'll open the chapel doors and say night. You know, people that don't know, or when we've had people that have come to work for us in an admin role from a larger funeral directors, they think we've really lost it. But, you know, I remember, and I used to call him Old Man Painter, which was Steve's granddad. Very big guy, and commanded lots of respect because of what he was, who he was, and the way he looked. And I always remember him saying, shaking his finger and saying, "Always remember this, son. Be nice to them when you're here, because you don't know who you're going to meet on the other side." Yeah. As a kid of 7 or 8, you'd be like, "Oh God, yeah." You know, and it stuck. It stuck. You know, one thing that we do pride ourselves on is the way that we look after people that we bring into our care. And probably one of the most difficult times in my funeral career was COVID, because the authorities prevented me looking after people, deceased, and also families. You know, I was having to go and bring people into our care that somebody had waved goodbye to into the back of an ambulance, and they couldn't go and visit them in hospital. They couldn't come into our chapel and see them because the regulations and the law prevented that. And the only thing they would ever see then is a coffin with their loved ones in. And then we went through the process, of course, as far as COVID moved on, where we were restricted to only 6 people at a funeral. How do you work that one out when you've got 4 children with partners and grandchildren and whatever? It was the worst time, wasn't it?
Yes.
Absolutely the worst time, because we weren't able to do our job, and that was to look after people. So that's my checkered past as far as the funeral industry is concerned. Theresa, I'm sure you'd love to tell people what you've done.
Yeah, so mine's, I was going to say it's a bit of a short story, that sounds like a bit
Okay, they rub it in our
Yeah, it's a little less varied. So I always wanted to work in funerals since I was a young teenager. I remember doing a careers quiz at school, you know, like they'd ask you questions and you get like pretty much an auto-generated answer, but mine was actually to be a funeral director, which at the time I thought, oh no, that's a bit odd. But as I got older, I realised I had such an interest, particularly for tributes and for the way that people talked about people that they lost. I was really fortunate that I actually only experienced the death of a great grandmother when I was younger, so I wasn't around it in that sense, but I felt drawn to it almost, and then the more I looked into it, I actually read that someone said it's a vocation as much as it is a career, and so I just knew that I had to do it, but it is quite hard to get into the funeral industry if you don't know somebody sometimes.
It's a very closed shop.
Yeah, it's very closed. And so I got my first job in funeral when I was 31. And that was with one of the big chains, which was wonderful because I was able to learn my craft there, learn everything that I needed there. But then I will always say the best thing that could have happened in my career was going to Franklin Hawkins, because it's a small independent, as we've said. You know, I get to work with my fiance, and you know, we are all such a small family, and it's wonderful. And I don't feel that I have that shock with people anymore. People used to, when they say, what do you do? And I'd say, I'm an undertaker. They'd be like, oh, but you're so happy. You're so, you know, like we're all going to walk around all the time being very sad. But it's genuinely, for me, is the biggest honour and the biggest just pleasure almost to be able to just go into work every day so happy and to be able to look after people. It sounds cliche, but it's so rewarding. Like, I can't imagine ever doing anything else.
I think one of the important things to know what Theresa's, I suppose most of your time, although you work on funerals, you also look after deceased as far as makeup, dressing, on the embalming side of it all. So whereas, I mean, I've done that in the past when there was just the 2 of us that worked in the business. You know, I've done that. I am the most unarty person in the world. Absolutely just, you know, doing makeup and things. It was like, what? How do you do that? So we all sort of have our roles, I suppose we could say. But then, and we all blend into one another. You know, it may be that Theresa will shout up and say, can somebody come and help me because we've got a deceased that's large and she needs some help getting them into the coffin, you know, or dressing them. Because we do have this problem now, of course, with obesity. We were talking about diets a few minutes. You know, it is something that's a new thing within, you know, all sorts of different industries. But Theresa also goes out on funerals. Yeah. My job is mainly, I'm a funeral director, you know, so yesterday was my Nirvana. Fantastic day. I went in, did 2 funerals, went home. I mean, that's looked after the families, looked after the funeral, went home. You know, although it was a full day, that's what I enjoy doing. Theresa gets a lot more from looking after the deceased. And it takes all sorts, it takes both sides. Sorry.
Yeah, and no, right. And I think what's so lovely about that aspect is because I know I lost my granddad a few years ago, and if you lose someone who's been poorly for quite some time, you feel like you're in this little bubble. The only people in that bubble with you could be doctors or nurses that you have coming out, and then when the funeral stuff come in, you feel like the bubble's being burst and they've taken them away from you. But it really helps to humanise and helps to bring us into their bubble when I can say to them, what would Mum like to wear? Would she like to have her nails painted? What about her hair? And people are often so surprised at that you can do that. It's not just a case of someone being lying in a sleep. They can look like they did as if they're going out or however you want.
It's when they come in with a wedding dress that they wore 50 years ago.
Yeah.
They're about 7 stone bigger and you've got to try and get them to fit into the wedding dress. That happens quite often as well.
Yeah.
We always say, we have the saying within our business that you tell us what you want, and as long as it's legal, we'll make it happen. And we do. And these sometimes will say to them, no, it's what the family wants.
Agreed.
But it is, you tell us what you want. If you want to go driving around Chelmsley Wood all day because that's what you used to do, we'll do. Whatever you want, we'll do. And that's, as a small business, we're really fortunate because we only ever do 2 funerals a day. So when we do a funeral, there's no rush. There's no, got to be on the next one. We take it nice and slow so we can give the family the time that they need. Unlike some people where they have to do 4 and 5 funerals a day, which usually with a corporate, so they're constantly clock watching. We don't. And we take it at that pace. That's how we do it. And people like that. And what's interesting is people, or families, more importantly, are sometimes prepared to wait a bit longer for a funeral because they know that's how they're going to be looked after. They don't want the conveyor belt scenario of just, when they come in to meet us, they know from day one who's going to be looking after them on the day. Theresa will go out with Nick, her husband, to do a removal and bring somebody into our care. It stands a marvellous chance that Theresa and Nick will also on that day be on the funeral as bearers, as drivers, Nick possibly as the funeral director. Theresa specialises in baby funerals, which I couldn't do. She's really, and she's brilliant at it, because I just dissolve into tears every time. Yeah. So I can't stop myself even when I'm dealing with it, whereas you are able to, I went through the death of a son at the age of when he was 32. So I've got a lot of empathy with people that are or have lost children. Whereas Theresa's got more of an ability to be able to support them. I just dissolve into this mess if it's children's funerals. So we do all sorts of different things within our small team, but we've got everybody there that can do whatever anybody wants. My speciality is military type funeral. It's what I do, Theresa's is babies. So we're all very different, but that's us. We're, as I say, a small business. We've got 2 branches, one up in Marston Green and one over in Tile Hill, Coventry. And it's very rare that we have anybody that comes to work for us that leaves. Only in a box, but it's just how it is. Anything else you want to add to that?
I just think when we talked about people kind of as giving people the ability to do whatever it is that they want, it's so lovely because you do only get the opportunity to do that for that person once. And so for us to be able to say to people, of course we'll do that because that's what you would like to do for Mum, it's wonderful because there's nothing worse than regretting, I wish I'd asked that, or I wish I'd, ask them to go here or do that, or if I could, have her dressed in this outfit.
Bearers are the most, bearers are probably the one thing that we get more of that than anything, don't we? Where people want to be bearers on funerals, they want to carry, and then they'll say, oh no, I don't think I can do it, I don't. And everybody can do it.
Yeah, I get a lot, because I do arrange sometimes as well, and people say, we've only got, my son and, my son-in-law, that's only 2 men, and I'm like, well, then we can have them in. And people don't think of that, people just they just think, oh, if I haven't got 6 guys that can do it, it can't be done. And we mix in with
we
people
encourage,
as well,
we encourage people, because it is something that is one of the last things that you can do, and it's not difficult, and we're always around. We would be there to support them. So if they have only got 2 family members, then 2 of ours or 3 of us, 4 of ours will stand in whichever we need. But it means that they're part of it as well. We encourage that, because the regret of not doing it is horrendous, because you kick yourself afterwards for not doing that. I could go on for hours about the funeral industry, I really could.
I never guessed.
I can tell you story after story, of things and whatever has happened. But I always find with these sort of things, people are itching to ask, as I say, the most bizarre questions. And yes, we cremate the handballs with the coffins. No, we don't take people out of the coffins, actually against the law.
A lot of people still think that.
You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do that. So those are the normal ones that people are sitting there thinking, should I ask this or not? Please ask away, whatever there is that's something that maybe you think happens or doesn't happen. We'll tell you it has.
How do you embalm?
Embalm?
What how do you actually exit?
Just up here, just below the collarbone, that's the best access to the artery.
So so an embalming is where we replace the fluid within a body, and we use we don't use what used to be the chemicals that we used a number of years ago. We tend to use more natural products. And we actually go in through what's called the common carotid artery, and we then basically pump what is a fluid into the body, and then we take out whatever, so blood for instance, that would come out as part of the embalming process. What it does, it means that it's enabling people to come into chapel for longer, to see whoever it is that's passed away. So it's funny bit of a funny saying that we have, the amount of people that come in and say, oh God, that never looked that good.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish we could perfect it for the living. We'd be multi-millionaires if we could. But it does make a big difference. And remember, that's that last memory for somebody. And the last thing, people are always very nervous about coming in to chapel. So if you can make it less stressful and, more of a nice memory, we have people that will come and sit in chapels with their loved ones for hours at a time. I've had them stop overnight. I have. Why would I stop them doing that? That's that time that they need. So embalming is a very old process that was done originally by the Egyptians. They developed the process, but it's far more sophisticated in the way that we do it, and very much more controlled in the way that we do it now. You can use the word, cock it up. Mm-hmm. You really can, if you don't know what you're doing. It's quite an art, because it is the human body. And we as a company, we as a business, we as individuals have to have permission and be qualified to do an embalming process.
So do many people go for the embalming?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No, and we can also, people did want to see a loved one after they passed away, and they didn't want to have the embalming. That's fine. We can prep. And also, embalming isn't necessarily an answer that means that they're going to be able to be viewed for longer, because you don't know. I always say, as we are in life, we are in death. Everyone's different. Your body is going to be different. But yeah, some people are quite, oh no, I don't want that, and that's absolutely fine. But I'd say more often than not,
That's
definitely
interesting.
people do, yeah.
Right, an opinion might be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we are very inquisitive when somebody comes in to make arrangements, because certain treatments, people that have been on certain treatments, do not react well with embalming. So we always need to know what somebody's passed away with. We have all the medical records in front of us generally from the doctor anyway. So, you know, for instance, if somebody's been taking certain cancer treatments, it can react badly. If somebody's got cirrhosis of the liver, jaundice, embalming, you know, some people find this amusing. It's not when it happens, let me tell you, because I've seen it, turns people green. Really, so it's not a finger in the air, guess what you're doing. It's quite a skill, it's an art. And you know, we're fortunate because Theresa can do embalming, so can Gary, who is the Franklin side of the business. He's been doing embalming for probably 30 years, and his wife, Theresa, Tina, Tina and Theresa, I'm old, I can't remember names. So Tina, who's Gary's wife, is also a very skilled embalmer.
But as well, we're very good in that if it's, you know, if it's someone who's quite old and you can see their body's been through a lot, then we would probably say, oh no, it's not the right thing to do, you know, and then we'd be honest with the family and say, we don't think this is the right thing to do, because, you know, it is still putting the body through something, albeit we are as gentle as possible, it is,
That's my take, I mean, and I'm aware in the conversations we've been having is that no one's got the right answer, so although I pronounce forth my opinions, that's all they are. Because I think for me, embalming, in terms of grieving, you're seeing someone as they're not, and I'm not sure. You know, for me, I think for someone that I love, I think I'll be like, you know, because it's messing with them. Yeah. In a sense.
Did you? I know you mentioned it. Did you go and see it?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, and how did that help?
There was some deterioration.
Yeah. But I think that can help as well.
Well, that's what I mean, that kind of, they looked healthier than they ever did. Well, I'm not sure, for me, how that would help me grieve. Well, they should be looking better than they look, because they're not here anymore.
Yeah.
It's not right.
And deterioration can happen in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
We can have somebody who's in chapel, and within an hour, just like that, and they've gone totally, and there's nothing you can do to stop that. Like there's nothing you can do to stop the rain and the wind. It's Mother Nature, and it's the way the human body is. We can never, and nobody will ever be able to predict that. You know, we can only do our best to make somebody as comfortable as we possibly can. You can't change Mother Nature, and it does happen overnight. We you know, but you also do get people where there's been a road accident or something like that, and Gary is particularly good at looking after somebody that's been involved in a severe accident and they've been really damaged. And I mean, you may never have seen him do this, but I've stood there watching him sometimes. And there's other ways of doing it, but he uses candle wax and a fine paintbrush, and you can actually replicate the look of the skin with candle wax. But can you imagine if you've got a relative, a son, a daughter, or whatever, that's been killed in a road accident or run over or whatever, and you need to see them. You've got to see them. You want to see them looking as a deformed person that's been in a road accident, or the way that you remembered them. And that's what embalming and that can be the difference to giving somebody a little bit of peace, and it is only a little bit of peace, to complete turmoil. And that's our job, as I said at the beginning. It's not just looking after the person that's passed away, it's looking after and supporting the family as well.
It's taking that call, I think, because I'm concerned, I'm interested in how we manage death. as the living. And I think that's working out what is most helpful, because it's not. We've talked about it. It's not the same for everyone. And although there are, there's kind of accepted stages of grief, no one does it in the same order, and some people get stuck on one for longer than others. So I think it's about partly what the season's been about. It's about us thinking, well, how am I going to handle this? And if we've thought about, do I want to see someone I love dead? What do I want to leave behind? It helps you kind of be ready. It's kind of training, isn't it?
There is no right or wrong.
No, but it's knowing because what I've seen, and I suspect you have a lot more than me, is that it happens, death happens, and people just they're not ready for it. They don't know what the person wanted. They don't know what they want. They don't know how to handle it, and that's partly because our society, I think, doesn't like talking about it.
Absolutely, and
that's ignore it and hope it never. Or when it happens, I'll deal with it then. It's a bit later. That's like running a marathon. I'll train the day before.
Yeah.
We were having a conversation earlier about funeral plans, and is a funeral plan a good thing or is it a bad thing? In our opinion, because of the industry that we're in, a funeral plan is the most thoughtful thing anybody can do. Whether you buy a funeral plan and pay for it there and then, or you just do a living will and leave it with somebody, or you can do a living will and leave it with your local funeral director, because we see families. And it happens more often than it doesn't, sit in front of us and they're going, I don't know what music she would have wanted. I don't know how he would have wanted to be dressed. I've no idea whether he would want to be viewed, because we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's such an important, it's part of life. Death is part of life. And it's, as I say, I understand what you're saying. Everybody and every family are different, and it would make things so much better if people would talk about it.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. So if people have got an idea or a view, or the family have talked about things, it makes a huge amount of difference when it comes to that time, because you then throw bereavement into the mix and people become totally confused. And for some people, we've been doing those for years, for people that want them, but we are seeing a lot of people that are coming in now going, I can't believe that Dad's chosen this, or Mum's chosen this, or whatever. It's not what we want. It's not what we as a family need to be able to say goodbye properly. And really our only advice to people then is, well, let's perhaps do a memorial service after or whatever, But it's still not the same. It's not the same. And I think we will see the decline as much as we've seen the rise in it. We've done direct cremations for I've known about them for 20, 25 years, where people don't want anybody there, just straight to the creme, that's it. And that's what people want, that's what we'll do. But the vast majority of people that are now part of families where people have taken these plans out are going, don't want it. It's not what really they would have wanted. And as I said at the beginning, and I'll keep on repeating it, we're not there just to look after the person that's passed away, we're there to look after and support the family as well.
A lot of the time when people do direct cremations, I've had people come in to do funeral plans with me and that's what they want, and I'll talk about it with them, and it's because they don't want to put their children through the stress. And it's like, well, that's I completely understand that, but talk to them about it, because
putting them through
it's putting them through distress though, which is it's worse, and it's but having that discussion with them, and then if it's something that you really, really, really want, you don't want to have a funeral, then that's fair enough. But I think what we can do, what's a lovely bridge between a traditional funeral as such and a pure cremation where they obviously come out to your house and you're just gone, is we can do an unattended cremation where we still have that loved one in with us. They stay with us until the funeral. We take them, they go in the hearse. There's 4 of us that go there, and they still have that traditional nice send off. That's it's a little bit of a bridge between the two.
And they do come in sometimes to the chapel and sit with in one of the chapels with the coffee. There's lots of different things. There's no this is it or this is it. There's anything in between that people want. Sorry.
What happens, I mean, what happens if somebody hasn't got a family and they've left saying that they want to come to you, for example, and but there's nobody else to do anything, they've not left anybody in charge or whatever.
Yeah.
What happens?
Okay, we do that all the time with lawyers predominantly that are the executors of wills, and we probably do 2 or 3 of those type of funerals a month.
Yeah.
Where it'll be us 4 in the front row.
Yeah.
Okay.
But nobody goes without service that have asked for it, even if there aren't any family. So generally, it will be, we work with various lawyers around the area, and they will say, I've had this death, I've got no family, I don't know a lot about them. If it's in a care home, for instance, you can always talk to somebody at a care home that will give you some information.
Even if it's just what music they liked, or just anything little like that.
Anything you can do to personalise it, and I would say the vast majority of people that have been in care homes, somebody from the care homes will come to the funeral. They'll feel part of that family or part of that person, so they'll attend, and we'll do. But I mean, we've done loads of those sort of things where we've sent a limousine only for one person from a care home. Or we'll go to a care home prior to the funeral or on the way to the funeral with the hearse, and everybody's come outside. I mean, it's just lovely. What respect that is, where that was their last place, where they lived. I find care home staff amazing.
The worst I've ever had is I turned up after the coffin and I was stuck in traffic. That's the worst I've ever had. They were going in and you could see that they were sweating, and I was driving in.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, if you want to give a funeral director a heart attack, don't turn up on time for a funeral as a minister. We've seen hundreds, thousands in my case, hundreds and thousands of funerals, and you stood at the back of them. It's something that we do as a company. One of us will always be at the back of the chapel. Because I can't tell you the amount of times we've had people faint, have fits, do whatever, and somebody needs to deal with that. I'll tell you a funny story. I was doing a Christmas service. It was a memorial service at Coventry in Cannon Hill Chapel with a minister, Dean Shipton, and he'd asked me to go and say a few words, because there was a lot of families that we looked after. Day before Christmas, 23rd, 24th, something around there. And I just got up and I was reading, I remember what I was reading, John 14, verses 1 to 6. In my house there are many rooms. I just started and some guy gets up and goes, "Oh!" and goes down, and I looked and everybody went silent, and this guy's on the floor. Heart attack. Okay? There was somebody in there that was medically trained. So, 999. Sir, it's an offence to waste emergency service. Because I've just said I'm in Charter Chapel at Canley Crematorium and somebody's had a heart attack. They thought I was a hoax.
Yeah.
And I was on the phone for 2 or 3 minutes trying to persuade them I am not a bloody hoax caller. I am in the chapel. We are doing a Christmas service and somebody's had a heart attack. See, that happened. But there we go, funny stories. I got lots of them. And at one time they used to send 2, 3 staff out to do a removal at home, bring somebody into their care. So the one person would be downstairs talking to the family, the other 2 would be looking after the person that passed away wherever they was. So these 3 are in the house, and the person that was talking to the family said, is it okay if we go up and see where Mum is and bring her into our care? Yeah, it's no problem. So the 2 guys have gone up the stairs with all their stuff into the bedroom, put the light on, pulled the sheet back, and the person lying in the bed goes, "Ah!" The 2 funeral guys go, "Whoa!" Run down the stairs and they're out the front door. They'd gone into the wrong bedroom. Yeah, they they've gone into the wrong bedroom.
That's not very reassuring, is it?
Sorry?
It's not very reassuring.
That's how it used to be now. But that's what happened. I'm going back 25 years ago, when they used to have to jump on the bus to go and get into work to pick up yeah. Imagine that. Imagine being the person lying there and you've got 2 funeral directors looking at you.
At least it didn't take her.
Have you ever had any knocking on the thing saying I'm alive?
I don't do that. We did once. It was horrendous. Just once. Not saying anything.
But
Just
that would be your fault, though, would it?
oh, this was as we were pulling into the crane. Andy, Jim, and I. And Andy Jim was an ex-fire officer. And he was a great guy, he's retired. Very down to earth, he'd seen everything. He'd been there, done that, he'd seen everything. And there was no side to Andy, he knew exactly where you were. And one day, we were going into Coventry again. And this person passed away very unexpectedly, and the family had continually told us this shouldn't have happened, she shouldn't have died at this age, and all this thing. And we literally were just pulling into the gates of the crane and we heard. And I looked at Andy and he looked at me and he went. And we both, I think, but I know he went white and he said I went white as well. And I then got a page in to the crane. And we never said a word to each other, not a word. And to this day, I have no idea what that was. I've also pulled into the crane and been overtaken by a fire engine.
So that other story, what happened? You didn't.
You check.
She were.
Sorry?
She might have.
You can't break a seal like, oh, trust me. When you get that far, you are not going to have somebody that has been lying in a coffin for 2.5 weeks that's alive.
That's what
You can't, it's impossible. It's absolute, impossible.
This is interesting to hear because that is the terror that people have. Isn't it?
Oh, gotcha.
She's got the fear of that.
Impossible. So, number one, if you've been embalmed, there's no way that you could possibly be alive. And number two, and this is probably the most important thing, there's a recommendation that's laid down by the National Association of Funeral Directors that we abide by, and to preserve a body in the best possible condition without deterioration, you keep them at around about 4.5 degrees. A human being cannot live longer than about 8 or 9 hours at that temperature. So it would be impossible. And prior to that, of course, there would have been 2 independent doctors that would have come in and certified life extinct. We would know. We would know. Please forget that fear. You've watched the picture of Dorian Gray, haven't you? That film where he's frightened and he has the bell put in the coffin and everything.
They used to do that now in Victoria.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. Impossible. It's impossible. Couldn't happen.
That's what I think.
Just remember, if it's a cremation, the process. There's nothing. We, and I hate to use the word, we supply or sell at the end of the day. 95% of people that we supply a coffin for, we use our region because it's a respectful wooden coffin, and that's all you need. You don't, unless there's a religious connotation. So Catholics will always have a mahogany, dark mahogany, Last Supper cross on the top.
Yeah.
That's what the Catholic funerals that are real orthodox. So in other words, where they're going to church the night before and all of those things. They will generally go with something like that. But for, bizarrely, I've got something different what I would have, haven't I? I've got a woolen coffin.
A what?
A woolen coffin. I've got in my funeral plan.
On this image, yeah.
A woolen coffin, yeah. I did. 6 cents. Yeah. The only reason I've got that is when they first bought these woolen coffins out, They brought them round to show us the people who supply us with these, and I was the one that got in it to try it, and I said, this is really comfortable. It's really, and that's on my funeral plan. I ordered a woolen coffin because it was comfortable.
I think it's a we bought a load, we couldn't shift it.
No, they
Get mixing pat.
Oh no, I need to put patterns.
So.
It's presumably rigid, isn't it?
yes,
it's
the
not,
side.
It's
Yeah.
not a bag.
So it's all out of wood. It's made out of wood with so it's got hardboard inside, and on the top, I would imagine. But it is for all intents and purposes a woolen coffin.
So they're cheaper.
God no, they're not. They're not. No.
Well, I ain't missing you. Listen, I should have started when I was one, not now.
But coffins like funeral transport, there's just about anything you could possibly wish for.
So would you pull me along on my mobility scooter?
If that's what you want.
I push everyone to motorbike.
No,
I'm not a
we do lots of
mobility
motorbike
scooter.
funerals because we're in Coventry, so home and drive, so we do lots of motorbikes. But I mean, God, I've done all sorts: Land Rovers, lorries, tractors, bikes, push bikes.
When you go to it, man, that takes me forever to get to where I've got to go to.
Where you go?
I mean, everything, whatever coffins, whatever you want. They do anything. Doctor Who's TARDIS, a chocolate box, a cake tin. They'll make a coffin for individual.
Well, they're doing the Millennium Falcon.
In what, sorry?
The Millennium Falcon.
Whatever you want is really available in the funeral industry.
Because the funeral industry, particularly sort of Victorian period on, it's professionalised, hasn't it? Because it used to be the family which had to do everything. And then the entertainer's role was much reduced, wasn't it? So it's kind of grown, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But that's been true of most, medicine, care, care homes.
Generally in the Victorian era, the funeral director was either a taxi company or the local carpenter.
Yeah.
Because they would have made the coffin.
Did you see the groovy poster? Because he's the poster that for tonight is a carpenter and
Yeah, that's where it would have. That's where it would have been and that's where the top hat came in then.
There you go. That was my question.
In the Victorian, if you think about things that you see period drama type things, if you looked at the gentry, the royals and whatever, if they were attending an important event, so predominantly with the royal family, they'd always wear top hats, and that's where the top hat comes from. It's a sign of respect to what was then royalty, and that's why funeral directors wear top hats now. More importantly, and I do on funerals. I've always got it on, apart from when I'm paging in front of the hearse or I'm in a church, because people can spot you. And they know who to go up and ask, because people don't know what to do. It's funeral director, it's what it says on the tin. You're directing that thing. People don't know where to go. We always ring our families up the night before and say, right, we will be with you at, and when you get in the car, we'll have a bit of a chat, we'll tell you exactly what's going to happen, we'll tell you where we're going. When we get to the chapel, just stop in the car for a couple of minutes. We're going to make sure that they're ready for us, because the last thing I need is losing the family in a crowd, but more importantly, the last thing they want to do is be talking to people. So if we keep them comfortable in the car, they haven't got to worry about any of that. We'll then guide them through the whole thing, and it'll be... My last phrase to people when I am phoning the night before is, don't move unless I'm there. So you stop where you are. Once we need to move around, once we need to go out, once we need to do, I'll be there. And I don't move from the back of a chapel, generally, because I'm watching everything that goes on. I'll know how long my last piece of music is, so I know, and I'll judge how many people I've got in the chapel, so I know when to walk down to the front, because there's nothing worse than I've been to funerals that others have done, where the final piece of music starts and the funeral director's down the front getting them. No, they've chosen that music. They want to listen to it. You know. Yeah, they want to listen to that. You know. So I'll work out how many I've got in the chapel to when I'm going to walk down to the front. What the minister does is up to them.
It's true.
Yeah. What the minister, that's true. Because most ministers they've done their bit, they want out. So not all of them are like that, but I will liaise with them and say, this is how I do it, it's up to you, but that's when I should be going down and the family know, not to me. Because they need to be there as long as they possibly can. I'll know whether they're having the curtains left open and they want to go over to touch the coffin, so I'll leave a few more seconds for that. All this beforehand, so that you can do what they want. And if they say, get me out of there as soon as you possibly can, fine. You've told me to do that, and I'll do that. You know, it's when we do a funeral and people go out into the garden afterwards. I'll always say to them, very quietly to the main people, you can stop here as long as you like. It's up to you. But if you want to go, just look at me. I'll come over and get you. And the vast majority of people will stand there for a couple of minutes chatting to people, and then they'll be looking. And I don't lose sight. Or one of our guys, they'll be watching, and we don't lose sight because they don't necessarily want to be standing making idle chat when they're still going through bereavement, and we'll get them over into the car. Just little things like that.
You normally stand at the door, don't you?
Yeah, I always stand till the last person's out, and usually I will wait till everyone's gone before I go.
Yeah.
And most good ministers will do
That's
that.
very kind of them.
No, but they will. But
Because you have, as a minister, the roles, it depends. If you don't know even if you don't know the family, they've asked for you generally. So you're not there just to sit there and say the magic words and off again. That's not. So you're there before them, and you're there after they're gone, and that's your job, I think. As
a number of years ago now, we got into conflict with the local Church of England, and the Church of England had a practice where they said that if you're doing a funeral, it should be the local parish vicar that looks after the funeral. Well, where we were, the local parish vicar that we got at that time was hopeless. I mean, hopeless. And he would do exactly that. He'd finish, he'd press the button, hit the music, and he'd be out the door in his car and gone. And we're like, it's not how we do it.
No.
Unless the family have asked and they know it's not how we do it. And we then started to select the right minister for the family. And especially if the family knew a minister, then they could say, well, we want this, or we'd recommend it. We had all sorts of unpleasant letters from the Church of England. You can't do this, you can't. Well, actually, we can.
Yeah.
We can. This is how we look after the families, you know. Okay, if your local vicar doesn't like it, I'm really sorry, but then he needs to learn how to really do a funeral properly, because the last thing you want is them in the car gone. You know.
There's also, I mean, even from a very basic point of view, if someone's paying for a service, literally are paying. So whoever's doing that should take it seriously, shouldn't they?
And we are lucky now. We've got a great list of ministers that we use, and we do select our minister for the family. You know, or we'll have Lord's my shepherd and Abide with me and John 14 verses 1 to 6.
Yeah.
That's more religious than most of them, but we do, and you just do it. But it always makes me laugh when it's not religious. It's a celebrant. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot more to it than people think.
But that's again when I'm doing arranging and people will say, you know, we're not religious, but you know, we should have the art. And I was like, well, you shouldn't. You should have what? You don't have to have it. Yeah.
That's what I tell them, but they're asking me as the vicar. I'll say, get that in. If that's not there,
never have anything just because I think you should.
Again, it's the inexperience of people that do that. Everybody thinks, not so much now, but at one time everybody thought you had to have a hymn at a funeral.
Yeah.
No, you don't. No, you don't. You have whatever you want, and the worst one I've ever had was Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead.
Do you have to wear black?
No, we don't. Quite often wear different clothes. My son's funerals, we all wore t-shirts with what if on, because his favourite saying was, what if?
So could I actually request you not to wear one?
Yeah, we wear all, we've got every combination of different coloured ties you can imagine. Coventry City, Birmingham City, Aston Villa, you name it, we've got them. If you wanted us in jeans and t-shirt, we'll do it. As long as you make sure everybody knows that Judith's asked us.
Well, I've told them already.
You'd still have to wear the top hat though, wouldn't they?
No, not at all, no, I mean, no. And whatever, if that personalises a funeral for somebody that makes them feel more comfortable, or as makes the family feel more comfortable, yeah, we will do whatever.
Car behind was that.
Yeah.
They just went in.
Okay, so
That's the first time I'd seen her.
slightly different to what you said. So that's an attended service, but what we call a hearse direct. So rather than the family, although we do go to people's houses and then they follow us, you don't have to have a limousine. You don't need to have a limousine. People will do a hearse direct.
Yeah, well, there was a limousine, but there was nobody in it.
I'll tell you what that would be. That would be the bearers. So the funeral directors would have put that on to carry their bearers to carry in. So we would never park our bearer car behind a hearse. It would always be parked separately.
No, it's just behind.
So I wouldn't have to come here in a hearse?
No, you come in here. If we do direct, unattended directs, we may use the hearse. The reason we used the hearse this morning, we were going straight onto another funeral after, or we would use our ambulance, one of our ambulances. If you said to me, I don't want to go in a hearse, then we would use an ambulance.
I have had that before, people who wanted to just go direct to the grave in the cemetery, and they've said, you know, I don't want to go in a hearse, can you just do the ambulance, and that's fine.
And then again, we've had families who've travelled in the hearse with us as well, which people didn't realise they could do.
I think you've answered a lot by just saying what you
Yeah.
do.
It makes you think.
That's the thing about it. That's like getting you to think about these things for the future, you know, and just pop something down in writing. You don't need to pay for your funeral now unless you want to. That's something that is out there, available funeral plan. But do what we call a living will on your funeral wishes. Write it down. Right.
Okay, well thank you very much.